I wonder what you thought when you saw like the trial of Kyle Rittenhouse and all the jumping the gun about him. We had so many press errors.
The Kyle Rittenhouse trial, I think I have a sort of unpopular opinion from, I run in liberal circles and I do a lot of social justice, but I do think that like people really wanted Kyle Rittenhouse to be a villain, and a lot of people weren't willing to take the evidence of the case seriously. Instead, we're trying to convict him based upon their interpretation of his character. And I think it was radically, radically irresponsible of the prosecutor to charge him with murder in the first place, because, why, like this was not a murder case. If you don't like, there's a interesting discussion to be had about like, okay, if you walk into a really highly charged emotional space that's uncontrolled and you walk into that space with a gun, are you provoking an attack? And I can see from the perspective of his, the people who were shot that like, yeah, if you see someone, you hear shots around and you see a guy with a gun, you might think, oh my gosh, I got to stop this shooter from shooting people. But that doesn't mean that Kyle Rittenhouse did not have the right to defend himself if he was not shooting people. And if you don't like the way that the laws are written, then if you don't like the self-defense law, then you can go to your legislature and say that you don't believe in self-defense. Mm-hmm. But I think that with the Kyle Rittenhouse case, there was so much focus on irrelevant information and character assassination instead of the specific actions that led up to this tragic moment, which isn't to say that I think that Kyle Rittenhouse should be celebrated as a hero either, because that's again playing him as a political football. He's a kid who made a mistake, but he doesn't deserve to spend the rest of his life in prison for it.
Yeah. There's some similarities in the cases in that, he didn't have quite as much coverage as you did, and his story didn't go on as long, but he had the president of the United States, now president, then candidate, calling him a white supremacist. I mean, talk about poisoning the jury pool. And there is no evidence for that. Even I, at the beginning, I'm like, oh, well, they said he was with the Proud Boys and he was making racist symbols. And we've actually taken a hard look at it on this show more than once. And there's just, that's not what happened. He went into a bar where they came over, they asked for a picture with him, he posed, and then they all did the okay sign, which Kyle Rittenhouse, his lawyers presented to the judge, and the prosecution had nothing to debunk it. He didn't even know what that was. He thought it was an okay sign, which it's been since the beginning of time. There was nothing on his social media. They scoured him. The Anti-Defamation League apparently did an investigation. The prosecutors looked at all of his cell phones, all his social, nothing. Didn't follow a white supremacist, didn't know a white supremacist. It was a lie. And so people are still confused about him and want him in jail because they think he hates people of color. There's no evidence, right? At some point you have to say, show me the evidence. And if they cannot, we as a responsible society have to move on.
Absolutely. And also I would say that whether or not he knows that he was doing an okay sign or a white supremacist sign is ultimately irrelevant. In the same way that if I were a professional dominatrix at the time that Meredith was murdered, it also would not have made a difference. It's irrelevant to the question of whether or not he's guilty of murder.